Hello, and welcome to me screaming into the void.
Yes, I know, I look like a corpse.
But that is intentional because we will be talking about the Autopsy of Jane Doe by André Øvredal, who is a Norwegian filmmaker. I love Norwegian filmmakers. I have a couple of movies that I like from the Scandinavian side of it all. And yes, I will be making a couple of videos also about the Scandinavian horror movies because they have a couple that are really fun. Dead Snow. If you haven't watched it, I'm just going to say skiing and Nazi zombies. And I will talk about the movie, obviously, at some point. There is no denying the fact that this movie is on my radar. André Øvredal, if you don't know, is a director who also did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which at Halloween time is one of my favorites to watch. He also did Troll Hunter, which is a found footage style movie about troll hunters. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark Part 2. I can't wait. We've waited too long. He also did Last Voyage of Demeter, which wasn't something I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love all your movies. Hi, by the way. I really like your movies, but this one just wasn't for me personally. I'm sure there's some people who might have enjoyed it. It was interesting. It wasn't my favorite of his. Let's put it that way. It stars Brian Cox. Yes, the Brian Cox from Succession, Alex Hirsch, and they play this father-son duo who are in a mortuary. Jane Doe is played by Alwyn Kelly. Øvredal, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, said that he didn't want to deal with a prosthetic body because he wanted the audience to connect with the body. Listen, some people might think it's a weird way of thinking that you wouldn't notice the difference, but honestly, I think it brought all the difference. He chose her particularly because she's very versed in yoga and controlling her breath, which made her perfect for even the positioning of the body. You will see throughout the movie that she has different positions that she has to assume as the body. I don't know how she managed to just keep her eyes open for so long without tearing up. Yes, there are cuts, but listen, the camera lingers long enough that even I was like, I was testing it with her. I didn't manage. I was tearing up every time. I would have been a crying cadaver on that table, I'm telling you right now. Martin Sheen was supposed to be cast as Tommy, who's the dad, who is played now by Brian Cox. I would have not been okay with that. I'm telling you.
No! God, please, no!
I'm so happy that Brian Cox got to be the dad because he brings the F-U-C-K to the whole thing. Yes, he says also the word a couple of times, which anybody who has watched Succession, he'll be like, he said it again. Oh, how nice. Why Alive Woman, Øvredal said that he wanted the audience to connect with it. And it was important to him because I get it also. The whole story revolves around this body. I would almost say that the body is the protagonist and not the antagonist. But we'll get into it. To prepare for this role, the director said that one of the two actors, either Brian Cox or Alex Hirsch, had to go and work with morticians in a mortuary. And Brian Cox was like, no, thank you. Thank you very much, but I will not do that. And Alex Hirsch was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I don't mind. He went to work with the morticians and even interviewed them and talked to them about their work, how they viewed life and how they viewed the whole being a mortician part of it all, which he then shared, obviously, with Brian Cox. And I think he saw over 50 dead bodies. I mean, good for him that he wasn't that squeamish. He was there and learned everything about cutting up bodies and stuff. You know me and special effects. I will always mention who does them because I feel like, especially in horror, they need to be applauded. And in this case too, they did such a good job because the camera is always very close. Because it is this story where they are practically in one single place in this mortuary, and it is revolving around a dead body, so the special effects have to be on point. The supervisor of the special effects is Scott McIntyre. He has been supervising and doing special effects makeups for 340 projects. I mean, I'm sure not all of them had required such elaborate special effects, but still, 340 projects, that's a lot. Among some of my favorites are Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If you haven't watched this movie, highly recommend. If you have, you know why. Doghouse, which is excellent. I will also be talking about this movie at some point. We will get into the zombification of it all, okay? I'm thinking of making a list of my favorite zombie movies. And Cockneys versus Zombies, again, another zombie movie. And The Baby. Listen, if you haven't watched the series The Baby on HBO Max, about a baby that is evil. It's so good. I liked it a lot. So the movie centers pretty much around this dead body, Jane Doe, who's found in a crime scene in the basement, half buried in the ground, in pristine shape. And the crime scene itself is a bloody mess. You have dead bodies all over the place, and she's the only one that seems to be just like untouched. She is delivered to this mortuary, led by this father-son duo, who need to find out the cause of death by sunrise. And shenanigans ensue. That's all I'm gonna say for the people who wanted the spoiler-free version of it all. And now we'll get into the details, because what else are we gonna do? The story starts with the title being displayed over Earth. And you don't see anything else. You see, I think, a couple of bones, maybe. You're not sure. I think we're going to get into the first spoiler. I truly believe that the ground we see when the title card comes in is the Salem witch trials ground. Later on, when they start analyzing her body and finding dirt underneath her fingernails, they even mention that it's sallow, some kind of special earth, which is only found in the north, in Pennsylvania. Is Salem in Pennsylvania? Salem? No, it's in Massachusetts. Based on the fact the ground we see in the beginning is definitely in my opinion, the Salem witch trials ground where the witches were burned and tortured and all that terrible historical fact that happened. I am of the belief that all the girls were innocent at the Salem witch trials, for sure. And they were tortured and they were burned and they went through horrific deaths, and none of them deserved it because they were children. What the heck? Seriously. Sorry, sometimes I cannot fathom how people can be so horrible to a human being for no other reason than their beliefs. We see the ground, and then it switches to sunshine and birds chirping. And as the camera focuses, you see this house. And the house is the crime scene. We get to meet Jane Doe for the first time, who is, as I said before, half buried and pristine on the ground, while the entire household is completely butchered to oblivion. You have blood everywhere. It's like really violent. The scene is extremely violent, just from what you can see that could have happened. I love the way that these scenes are portrayed by Øvredal. I love the saying, show, don't tell. Some directors and screenwriters just spend way too much time in exposition and talking about what happened. Øvredal does that so well. Like, you do have the sheriff, you do have the coroners who are taking pictures, but the camera shows a lot of it for you to be able to understand this was a very violent crime scene and everyone is dead and Jane Doe's body is still pristine. So the sheriff is like, listen, we need to figure out what happened with her and we're going to deliver her to the mortuary. Next scene, we are at the mortuary. We again get this camera telling us the story already in the beginning, showing us all the nooks and crannies of the mortuary as if warning us of the things to come, right? You have the mirror at the top that shows the corner so that I guess they don't bang into each other while they are trolleying around the dead bodies. You have the entrance. The mortuary is underground, and there is just one rickety lift that kind of goes to the outer world. And then you have a winding staircase. It winds up to these heavy doors that open up towards the outside. So father and son work together, and the body is being brought by the sheriff. The sheriff, Sheriff Burke, is played by Michael McElhatton. McElhatton? The guy from Game of Thrones. And he brings the body and is like, listen, I need the cause of death by the morning because we need to figure out what happened. All the other bodies look terrible, and she's the only one who seems to be like pristine, and we need to figure out what's happening. As you see the father and son working together, you also see a cat who's called Stanley, who hunts mice, and he's a very sweet cat. And you get to know that this cat belonged to the wife of Tommy. The son is wanting to leave the mortuary and the dad's practice to go and move out with his girlfriend and get a real job, whatever that means for him. I can understand that at a young age, you don't want to do the same thing that your parents did. I mean, working in a mortuary is not that bad if you consider office jobs. To me, at least. I know. I have a strange way of thinking. Don't ask. Before the body is delivered, you see that Austin's girlfriend comes to visit him and is curious about the corpses that they have. At first, Austin was like, no, my dad won't appreciate it. You know, it's a bit disrespectful and it's really gross and you shouldn't look at them. And the girlfriend's like, yeah, but I want to see them. Show me the bodies, which same. A bit. Only when you do see the dead bodies, I'm like, okay, I retract my same. Because the first dead body that we see is a woman whose eyes are sewn shut and mouth is sewn shut. That's very creepy. The second body that we see is a guy whose face has been caved in from a gunshot, and he has a bell. Anybody who knows a bit about dead bodies and what happened in the past, if you don't, I will let you know right now because I find it a pretty fascinating fact. In the olden days, because they couldn't differentiate between a comatose patient and a dead body, they would put bells on the corpses because they realized at some point that people were being buried alive and they couldn't get out. And they would try to claw their way out. They would tie a string, bring it out of the grave, and then I think tie it to a tree or something. The bell will ring and they will know that it was a comatose body and not a dead one. When the girlfriend sees the bell, she asks Tommy why that is, and he says he is old school and he has certain traditions that he doesn't like to break. And he explains to her the whole thing about, differentiating dead bodies from comatose people. So she saw the dead body, and then Alex Hirsch is like, okay, let's go, because they had planned to have a nice evening somewhere. And right as he goes out, the sheriff comes with the corpse. And then he's like, listen, I need to go and help my dad. So he goes back down. That's when they start the autopsy of Jane Doe. And the whole movie is nothing but the autopsy. And you would think that it might be boring for 1.5 hours to watch a corpse being spliced open. You would be very wrong. As the body is rolled into the mortuary, the cat hisses at the body, which is already the first sign that something is wrong. And I was about to say, run, get away from there. But they ignore the cat. Of course they do. I love that at the 20-minute mark, when they open her eyes, they see that the eyes are gray, which is confusing to them because as they dissect her body, blood flows out, which only happens with fresh corpses. But old corpses have grayed out eyes. So which one is it? We don't know, or do we? They notice a couple of very strange things. All of her wrists and ankles have been shattered. The weirdest part of this body is that the inside is completely effed. Pitch black lungs. She has writings on the inside of her body. Judging from the inside of her body, you know she's been tortured to oblivion. And yet her outer body looks as pristine as it could. Slowly, with the autopsy, you as a viewer already realize, even Brian Cox says, judging by how black her lungs are, she should be burnt to a crisp, which she isn't. So all of this is very strange. The sound department did such a good job. At some point, he breaks her sternum and you hear the cracking of it. I was so uncomfortable because at some point you realize, okay, this body might be alive. I don't know yet how, I don't know yet why. Is it cursed? Is it anything else? So this whole movie is basically revealing to you what happened and divulging to you who Jane Doe is as a person. Tommy, the father, also realizes that here her waist is very tiny, which could only happen if she were wearing a corset for a very long time. So now that I'm telling you these things, you're slowly putting one and one together, right? You have the burnt lungs, the tiny corset, the weird inscriptions on the inside, and now we come into spoiler territory. Even her heart is scarred. Like, she's been through hell and worse. The son hears noises in the hallway and is like, okay, I'm gonna go and check them out. In the reflection, he sees a body just standing. I think that it's Jane Doe's body. Not really. She's like effing with them. So she's like projecting herself. And you see it in the mirror only. The camera pans down the hallways. It reminded me very much of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which came later. He has the certain signature that he keeps implementing in his movies, because in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, when it is, I think, the second or third story with that weird blob lady and the red hallways, you have the same kind of camera pans, which evokes this eerie kind of feeling that makes you very uncomfortable because it lingers, right? So good. He goes to check out the noise and he goes to the air vent, and even that scene made me so uncomfortable because I was like, listen, there is something gonna come out of the air vent. I'm gonna be so scared. But it wasn't. It was just a cat that had been completely and utterly obliterated, and it was so bad. Brian Cox takes the cat, and the cat is suffering, and he has the cat to take it out of its misery. Then he puts it in the incineration and just watches it, having the last dregs of his wife just going up in flames. It was sad. It was very sad. I felt bad. Me and cats, man, I'm telling you. Me and animals in general. It's weird. You give me a horror movie where there is a dead body or people have been butchered, I'm like, yeah, okay. But you give me a horror movie where animals are suffering and I'm like, no, I'm not okay. This is terrible. Back to the autopsy and the mortuary room, we go to stage 3. Like, there is, I think, 4 or 5 stages to the autopsy, and we are in stage 3, where he finds Jimson weed in her digestive tract, which again is weird because flowers shouldn't last that long. And before that, they found a tooth in a weird cloth. And again, because of the stomach acids, it should have dissolved. However, it hasn't. Again, we realized that this flower is only found up north, and Tommy, the dad, is slowly putting 2 and 2 together. The son is starting to feel really uncomfortable because lights are flickering, the radio is changing to a weird song. The radio keeps changing back to a very old folksy song. So let the sun shine in.
Stop it.
Which I like because it's very old school horror movie, you know, the whole la 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 la.
Bruh.
Nothing creepier than children singing in the background of a horror movie. Tirsh is like, listen, can't we do this in the morning because this stuff is creeping me out. I have a bad feeling. And the dad's like, no, we need a cause of death by the morning. I cannot leave the corpse. Once we start, we cannot stop. So let's get going. Let's keep moving. Tirsh examines also the cloth where he had found the tooth in. And he realizes she's missing a tooth in the back. It fits, the tooth they found in the cloth fits the one that she's missing. So they pulled out her tooth, put it in a cloth that has some writings in it, made her ingest it. The broken wrists, the broken ankles to restrain her, all the writing on the inside of her body, the lacerations on her heart, the blackness of her lungs, everything seems to point out to a ritual. As the dad peels the skin open and sees all the markings, the lights shatter above and it gets completely dark. And when the son gets the torch? Shiny light thingy, you know what I mean? As he switches it on, he sees that all of the, those places where they put the corpses in to keep them cold, all the doors had opened and all the corpses had disappeared from in there. Not creepy at all. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's very creepy. Now they're both freaked out because the corpses are missing and they can't explain why, and they're realizing something's really up. So they decide to take the elevator, but the elevator obviously doesn't work because the generator that has been switched on doesn't have enough juice to also power up the elevator. That's when they run towards the office because they hear like steps and they get freaked out. That's where you see one foot appearing underneath the doorway with the bell. So we get our first corpse attack. Yes, I'm gonna call it corpse attack. And then it stops. And the son is like, this is her. She's orchestrating this whole thing. And the dad says, listen, you're talking about a corpse. And he says, listen, with all the things that have happened, I think we are beyond questioning whether or not this is supernatural. She can't just be a body because think about the marks, think about the pristineness of the outside of the body. And he really wanted to leave. Then they hear, I think, some sound from the shower curtains. And the dad wants to pull open those shower curtains. And the son sees the second dead body. The dad gets attacked really brutally. He gets thrown on the ground and he gets smashed in the ribs. Now the dad is even convinced, okay, it's her. Okay, we need to figure out what's happening. The dad says, I have this idea. We'll get the body to the crematorium and we'll burn it to a crisp. Sir, what about blackened lungs and pristine body? Don't you understand that that's not going to help at all? We have the scene that is obviously an ode to The Shining where Alex Hirsch takes an axe and starts chopping away at the door, where there is this hole that the axe has made in the door and he looks through it and you see the dead body of the woman whose lips and eyes have been sewn shut. That she looks through it and she screams and all of her sutures just, it is so good. He then turns around and says, F it. And he takes burning fluid and just burns the body as is on the tray that they have her on. And the flames just burst so high that the entire ceiling starts burning. And the dad needs to get the fire extinguisher and he extinguishes the body. And then you realize that the body is still pristine. Now the dad's like, okay, we're in trouble. And then the elevator dings and dad and son run towards the elevator because right now they're like, listen, we need to escape this place. This is not good. And they run towards the elevator. They manage to get in and they get followed by a dead body. Then they try to shut the doors, but they can't. And they can hear the dead body. It's like shuffling across the ground and you even hear the bell ring. And so Brian Cox takes the axe and just slams it down on the body, which, same. Only, I kept a little thing from you. In the beginning of the movie, Hirsch cancels his plans with his girlfriend and is like, listen, come back in 2 hours. We can go and watch a movie or whatever, okay? I promise. So I'm guessing it's been 2 hours. And by the time that Tommy, the dad, is swinging down his axe, you can hear the girlfriend's voice making guttural sounds. And that's when he realizes, shoot. That's what I like about the story. You get to know so much with so little. You know that has plans with his girlfriend, and he wants to move in with his girlfriend and leave his dad, and has all of these things. And so with all that in mind, that devastation, you're joined into it. He had plans. He had plans. And his dad just axed them down. Not on purpose, obviously, but still. When they sit in the elevator, the dad and son have this deep talk where the dad's like, you know why I called your mom Ray, right? And the son's like, no, why? He says, I used to call her Ray of Sunshine. And then he muses over the fact that he never realized how badly his wife felt. I'm guessing alluding to the fact that she was most probably depressed or just dealing with some kind of mental health issues. He blames himself because he didn't see it because she was always so happy and bubbly. And he also says that he has made a lot of mistakes towards his son. And he feels like his son had to pay for the mistakes that his dad did, right? Which is also something that is like this generational thing that if your parents didn't deal with certain things, it's given over to you like a curse. This scene in the elevator was one of the director's favorite scenes because he said, I only placed the camera and we watched a fantastic performance between Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch. And the son's like, okay, but now comes the question, why hasn't she killed them yet? What is it that she's trying to show? Or what is it that she's trying to say? There needs to be a reason. Is she toying with them? What is she up to? So off they go, back to the morgue. They proceed with her head because that's the last part they haven't yet checked. So they slice into the brain and take out a piece and analyze it underneath the microscope. And they realize that the cells are still alive, meaning she is still alive. Something's keeping her going. Then with the cloth that they had with the writings, they figure out Leviticus 20:27, 7th century, New England. The dad finally pieces it all together and he's like, oh, because in Leviticus it's written, for they are a witch and blood shall be on their hands. The dad now has this theory because he said that these Salem kids were not witches. None of them were. And they were all innocent children who were either burned, killed in a horrible way, or tortured beyond belief. And he feels like the ritual that these horrible people had done upon this poor girl had kind of a reverse effect. So instead of keeping the witch at bay, they created a witch by doing the ritual. He feels that she is keeping them alive to complete the ritual that was done to her. And Brian Cox also realizes that because where he was bashed to the ground on the side, it's slowly looking like the markings that she had on her body. And when he realizes that, he turns to her and says, I'm offering myself up. The only thing I'm asking you is not to hurt my son. He goes through the whole torture process, right? His wrists get shattered, his ankles get shattered, and he tries to get the knife to complete the ritual because they had also cut out her tongue. I forgot to say they also cut out her tongue. And he wants to reach to the scalpel to complete the ritual by cutting off his tongue. And his son misinterprets that and gives him the coup de grace and takes the scalpel and unalives him. That was bad. That was really bad. There is such a well-made scene again. It's just the camera and the lighting giving you this unnerving feeling. We then hear banging on the outside of the door and we think we hear the sheriff yelling down. Here she's trying to open these giant doors and can't. So he goes up the winding staircase and tries to open the doors. And he's like, I can't open it. I can't open it. And then you hear the sheriff's voice saying, so let the sun shine in. Next thing you see is Alex's dad in front of him as a dead body, pushing him and dies. And then we have again these camera pans toward the mortuary, just showing us again the different places that we already saw in the beginning. So we are back outside, the sun is shining, the sheriff gets inside the morgue and is like, what the hell happened here? There is bodies everywhere, blood everywhere. It makes no sense except that Jane Doe's body is again as pristine as ever, as if she has never been touched. So while Brian Cox went through all the rituals of having his bones broken and everything, you see slowly that Jane Doe's eyes are getting back to brown that they were, I guess, when she was alive, meaning that the ritual was working. However, since the ritual wasn't completed, her eyes turn back to gray, meaning she's back to the state that she was in the beginning of the movie. And as they trolley her into the ambulance, and we are in that ambulance sitting with the guy who's driving, the radio on the ambulance turns back to "So let the sun shine in," and the little toe wiggles and the bell rings. And that's when the movie ends. I have told you what this movie is about, but I think you should definitely watch the movie because there is so much detail that I've left out, and there is such a big love to the art of how every scene is shown. I love nothing more than having this one place wonder where the actors really shine, and all three of them did. And the entirety of this movie just works because of every single detail that was put into it, of how the camera was right front and center, just sucking you in. The special effects team did such a great job with the corpses because you really believed it. You really believed that her body was being... There is this theory that all of this was just a hallucination through the ritual that was done upon her. She became a witch. I understand the fact that she wants to put out this fury of wanting to avenge her death and avenge herself for all the torture that she's been put through. It's theorized that all of the things that father and son go through are just hallucinations that she created for them. Because think about it. In the end, the lights aren't broken anymore, the body is pristine, and all of the deaths are practically done because they were harming each other. But on the other hand, I feel like there is a little bit of playroom to interpretation. I like the fact that she seems to be a very powerful witch. I also like the fact that no matter what, this movie will keep you on your toes. And Brian Cox is in it. Do we need more? I don't think so. If you've watched the movie, let me know below how you felt about it. If you know any tidbits that I missed. This was me screaming into the void. I hope you had fun floating out there. And see you next time. Bye!